Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Marco Dure Show, everybody. It is Thursday, September 18th, 2025. Thanks for tuning in today's show to get all the relevant, groundbreaking news, both here in the United States and around the world. The only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Don't forget to hit that like button, follow the show, hit that notification tab, and share it with as many people as possible to help spread this truth. Thanks again for all those that do that. Let's get ready now for the best hour that radio has to offer. Uncensored and ready to go. You know, I normally don't start off my show talking about people like Jimmy Kimmel. They're essentially irrelevant to me, and I don't pay attention to these people at all. Probably many people watching don't watch the show. So why would I care about this? Why would I care that Jimmy Kimmel has now refused to apologize for the remarks he made in his show earlier this week, and now is essentially canceled from the program? Why do I care about this? In the New York Post, it says that the late-night Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Kimmel, said that he was unwilling to apologize for these remarks and that he blamed MAGA supporters for killing the conservative activist Charlie Kirk, and then said he was going to double down on attacking President Trump's backers. And he did that before he was then yanked from the air. And now he then learned from the top executives like Dana Walton at Disney on Wednesday afternoon that his show was going to be removed indefinitely. So the show is no more. It's over. The affiliates are no longer going to be streaming the show on other platforms as well. He immediately, during the call, refused to comply with calls from the critics and the owners of dozens of ABC affiliate stations for him to go out and apologize for this. I guess if there's one thing I suppose I could admire about this clown, who, again, I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. I don't find him funny. The show's ratings are plummeting as is. Again, he's irrelevant to me. Colbert, irrelevant. Jimmy Fallon, they're all irrelevant to me. None of these people are funny. They're partisan hacks. But if I can admire one thing about him, one thing, at least he's standing to his ground here. Why do I say this, though? Why is this a big concern to me, maybe to you even, I would have to imagine? As disgusting as his comment was that he made on a show earlier this week, if we're going to censor speech and tear down speech and remove speech that we don't like, anyone is fair game. We've seen the left do this for well over a decade now with cancel culture. People said something they didn't like, the immediate reaction was to go out and cancel that person. We saw it happen. We saw that in the terms of free speech, free expression. We had bakers who were under fire for not wanting to, again, go with what people wanted to write on various cakes and what have you. We saw all that come into play. The problem with all this, again, the left has been capitalizing on this for well over a decade now. And now it's starting to happen to the left. But should we, on the right, be championing this? That's what I'm asking you. Because if it can happen to us, and we disagree with it, we believe in free speech, freedom of expression, as dumb as what Jimmy Kimmel said, and as ruthless as it was, does he have a right to say it on the air? I seem to think that he does. However, Disney felt that if Kimmel had doubled down on these MAGA comments, then the company would have to be forced to make a drastic decision simply by suspending this show now. But what's interesting, if you read this New York Post article on this, it says that Disney came under fire from Federal Communications Commissioner Chairman Brendan Carr over the comments made by Jimmy's show, or on Jimmy's show, about Kirk's killer demanding action from the company after hearing some of the sickest conduct possible. So we've got to ask ourselves, is now the Trump administration using the FCC to get Jimmy Kimmel's show canceled? And if it is that is a big problem. I believe that. I think you should believe that as well. Again, I don't have to listen to Jimmy Kimmel. I don't care about Jimmy Kimmel. He's not funny to me. If he says something I disagree with vehemently like this, I'm not watching his show. I've never watched his show, to be honest with you, so I don't really care. But I have the ability to do that. I don't have to watch his show. Or Colbert. Or Jon Stewart. Or John Oliver. Or any of these other, clowns that I just don't care about. I don't have to watch the show. I decide what I watch. I decide what television programs I buy or purchase in packages. You do too. So I don't need the FCC to come in and say, we don't want you to hear what Jimmy Kimmel has to say, so we're going to throw him off the air. Now, some people are cheering this on the right. Look what he did. He deserves it. Finally, he's getting the cancel culture catching up to him. That's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. Now, Carr wasn't the only one that, again, reached this conclusion. Kimmel faced backlash from Sinclair Broadcast Group and Nexstar as well, which owns, again, dozens of these ABC affiliates, both of whom slammed Kimmel and preempted his show from continuing on. Sinclair went as far as to demand that Kimmel issue this direct apology to Charlie Kirk's family and, of course, make a meaningful personal donation to Charlie's Turning Point USA. I guess he refused. He's standing his ground here. We also have to think about the people that work for this show, by the way. Jimmy Kimmel's going to be fine. He's a multi-millionaire. He's probably worth tens of millions of dollars. But now the show's been on what? 23, I believe, seasons, somehow. Now, again, if this is a economical issue, like with the Colbert Show, okay, that makes sense. The show's being canceled. The ratings suck. People aren't watching. They're losing money. Right? What was it? $40 to $50 million they're losing on airing this show. That's one thing. Now, from what I've read, the show has already been plummeting as far as the ratings go. I don't know where the show stands economically. But if we're just going to cancel the show because he said something we disagree with or we don't like, I have a problem with that. I have a big problem with that. People's lives are now changing. People that work on the show, the writers, as awful as they are, their lives are affected. All the crew behind the scenes that you don't see that make this show come together. Now, what are they going to do? This affects other people's lives too. Don't misunderstand that. So even though while we say, okay, Jimmy Kimmel's, rich beyond all measures. I mean, God knows he's got millions upon millions of dollars. Economically, he'll be fine. He'll probably bounce back, get another show, do something else. I mean, the guy who did radio before, he was a comedian as well. He'll bounce back on something. He'll get picked up again later on. But never forget, there's other people behind the scenes. When you close a business down, there are other people behind the scenes that work for the business, that have a stake in the outcome of what happens to that company or that business. And people's lives are affected by it. So while you can champion it, Jimmy Kimmel's been taken off the air. Other people now are looking for work. Again, I don't know what they earn. I'm sure some of them do very well. But still, other people's lives have been affected by this. And they don't know what they're going to go to next. Maybe they get blacklisted because they work for the Jimmy Kimmel Show. I don't know. Now, some of you are probably asking, what did he say? Why is he getting thrown off the air? This is what he said, and of course, this is why Disney's ABC is now pulling the strings from the show.
We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
No, you know, he's kind of making a jab at Donald Trump in this. The way he responded to the question that was just asked him, how are you doing after the loss of Charlie? He starts talking about something else. And he made a joke about it. Do I think he should be thrown off the air for this? I mean, he made a comment, again, about whom the killer was, again, associating with. We don't know anything about the killer yet. We really don't. Originally, it came out that he was, a MAGA supporter, whatever the hell they're trying to put out there. Doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter to me. We don't know anything about this guy. We don't even know if it's him, to be honest with you. And by the way, just not to go off the point from what I'm talking about here, free speech. The area in which Charlie was speaking, where the tent was set up, is being completely reconstructed right now. It's being completely torn down. To me, that's a bit odd when you're in an active case about what happened to Charlie. I'm just going to remind you, as of today, over a week after this awful assassination took place, we still have no ballistics on the bullet. We have no idea, again, what the autopsy shows, where the bullet came from. That would be very helpful in this case. Did it come from up top on an elevated rooftop from 200 yards away? Where did it strike Charlie? Was he dead on impact? We should know all these things. Can we tie the bullet to the gun that allegedly is owned by this Tyler Robinson? Can we get that? Can we place him there on the roof that day? All we have is a picture to go by, which to me doesn't even really look like him. It looks similar, doesn't really look like him. And a gun that he apparently reassembled, left in a towel, and placed in a wooded area before driving 270 miles back to where he's from. So we should be able to place him. Can we place him on the campus prior to this? All these questions should be asked over time. And again, I don't really buy the confessions either. He goes and does this, confesses to the roommate or whoever he is to him, confesses to the father, and then he won't cooperate with police. That again, it all seems very odd to me. He takes the gun with him, but leaves the screwdriver right where the crime was committed, scales the roof, changes back into his clothes. I never understood that either. Then decides, hey, I've evaded police. I'm going to put this gun now fully assembled, I guess without the screwdriver he needed, and I'm going to leave it in an area where police can find it. The whole thing that ties him to this is the gun, and he's going to leave it behind and then drive 270 miles back. I don't know, folks. It doesn't make any bit of sense to me. And it gets weirder and weirder as I look into this even more. Now they're totally reconstructing this area where Charlie was speaking. The crime scene? Do we even get all the information we needed from the crime scene? Why are they doing this? I mean, it was an outdoor stage. It was what it looks like to me. It was an outdoor stage where people can speak. You know, they're just going to tear everything down now? Very odd to me. Very odd what's happening with this case right now. Yeah, so, I look at these things. I hear this, people on the right championing this. What he said was, not something anyone should be saying about someone who's just been killed. Right? I mean, to me, that's classless. I don't like it. Again, I don't listen to Jimmy Kimmel. I don't find him funny. But should he be thrown off the air for what he just said? I don't think so. I think he has a right to say what he believes. He made it very clear. He doesn't give a damn about Charlie Kirk. For a guy that gets on the stage and cries all the time for other things, you would think that he would have a little bit more compassion And what else? Maybe some solidarity that we shouldn't be killing one another in this country. That's the way I view it. But to tear the show down because we don't like what he said, and again, if the Trump administration is using the FCC in order to do this, I don't agree with that at all. Again, if this is something economical that the affiliates have decided they want to do, that's something totally different. But if this is a push from the FCC about licensing for the show or the network, and if they don't do this, so they don't take him off the air because we don't like what he said, that is a violation of his free speech to make a fool of himself night after night on the air. All right, moving on. Let's talk about this other thing. Oh, yeah. Fox News has Trump to designate Antifa a major terrorist organization. Now, I talked about this, I think, last week, just briefly stating that this was Trump's intention to do. I believe he said this last week when questioned about this. I may have brought this up to you that they were thinking about doing this. I don't believe there's anything set in stone yet. But on Wednesday, Trump announced that he would then designate Antifa, this left-wing activist group, as a major terrorist organization, stating that it's a sick, dangerous, and radical left disaster. That's what he said in a Truth Social post. And then he also was going to be recommending that the funding for Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices in place. And in the light of what happened to Charlie, we see that they're, again, trying to crack down on these organizations that put out this propaganda. We've seen Trump labeled, again, and they're using this terminology that he's a dictator, that he's a Hitler, he's, Hitler incarnate, he's going to be a fascist dictator, he's, going to tear down democracy. I played you all the vitriol that these people spew. It's all lies. But let's talk further about this. What does this mean now that we're going to designate that a group is a terrorist organization? Now, are they a terrorist organization? What is terrorism? Terrorism, legally, by definition, is the unlawful use of violence and or intimidation or coercion to reach a political means. So Antifa is going to be in the streets, and they're going to, they say they're going to target this group. And they make that known. Or you can't cross this street if you're X, Y, or Z. Or else we're going to do A, B, and C to you. No, that's, again, encouraging and threatening violence. 100%. That's illegal. But again, if we're going to take a group of people, and again, they very well have these ideas that we disagree with fundamentally as Americans, as people that live in a free society, a civil society. We're not going to be coerced by a group of people like this. But to, again, label the group as a terrorist organization, we decide who, again, is going to be labeled like this. So we have to ask ourselves, can the next administration that comes in label the Proud Boys as a terrorist organization? Demand that we go through everything about them? Now, again, I'm not saying we shouldn't look at these groups. But what I am saying is when you label a group of people that associate with, again, these ideas we disagree with, most of us do. Most Americans disagree with Antifa, by the way. This pro-communism, that they say they're anti-fascist, even though they really are the fascists. Tearing down traditional values. They've attacked police. Actions are different than just affiliation, I would think. But you have to ask yourself this. If the Trump administration could simply say this group of people is a terrorist organization, the next administration can come in and simply do the same thing. And I use the example, the Proud Boys, right? They can say the Proud Boys are a terrorist organization. They threaten the well-being of Americans, and we're going to look into each and every one of them. We're going to arrest them, and we're going to throw them in jail. Now, some of you listening go, but Marco, they're not a terrorist organization. They simply protest. They have they say things, or they speak, and that's it. They're not doing anything violent. Doesn't matter. They've labeled them as a terrorist organization because words are now scary. Do you see how this can work? This is exactly what they can do. Well, you're promoting violence at your rallies, right? Everyone's got a little uniform on, roughly, right? They're carrying that American flag. And it's a big threat to minorities in America. They could do that so easily. So, we've got to be careful about, if we're going to be labeling groups as a major terrorist organization, we should be figuring out if we are doing something that is absolutely illegal. And I hear my phone ringing in the background. I'm not sure why. That's upsetting me right now. But we have to understand something. If we're going to be doing this, if this is going to be happening, we are going to have to understand that anybody can do this to anybody. And that's the sad truth about it. If the Trump administration can do that, then the next Democratic regime that comes in can simply label pro-lifers. We saw that with the Biden administration as, worthy of getting the FBI to come do a 6 a.m. wake-up call. We can get, who was that other? Oh, Catholics. I'm a Catholic. Right? They were looking at Catholics that attended Latin Mass. They were deciding this is a group of people we need to be looking at, the FBI. January 6th people. Anyone that attended January 6th in promotion of Donald Trump and the Stop the Steal rally. Those people were terrorists. They designated. That's how they describe them to you. It's a very slippery slope when you get into this labeling game. Now, again, if people are doing things that are legal, if they're threatening violence, if they're attacking police and they're in a uniform and they're showing up with firearms, again, to coerce you, to make you do a certain thing, to scare you, that's worthy of being looked into, of course. The individuals that are involved in this and any money trail that is supporting that. But again, to label every single person in that group, it's going to be a very slippery slope when that happens. And again, I'm not saying Antifa doesn't do things that result in terrorism. They have. We saw that during the George Floyd protests, right? Remember up in Portland, Oregon? They set fire to a building where federal agents were protecting. They set the building on fire. That is a terrorist organization. Excuse me, a terrorist act. And they should have been brought to justice by that. They weren't, of course. But when we simply start saying we're going to start labeling this group and that group as terrorist organizations, you're going to get the Democrats to result in kind. And if the Trump presidency can do it, any single presidency can do it as well. They could do it with Turning Point USA, for God's sakes. Hey, Turning Point's a terrorist organization. Look what Charlie Kirk has said. He's a racist, bigot, sexist, xenophobe, homophobe, transphobe. He's threatening the lives of all these people. We need to shut this down right away. We need to arrest the people that donate. You see how easy it is, folks? It's very easy to do. So let's look at the actions of people that commit crimes, of course, and that organize in the streets to commit these crimes. And then we can look at people that are funding these groups and the communications they have in order to do that. Versus simply just saying, hey, we're going to label Antifa as this group. Because when you start getting in the labeling and the designation games, you're going to start seeing a major, major problem. All right, let's go on. Washington Examiner has this article up, and of course, Gavin Newsom dials back up the rhetoric, folks, stating that we'll lose this democracy. So he's talking about this redistricting game, and I know much about Gavin Newsom, as most of you know. So now he's blowing past these warnings about dialing down the rhetoric, and of course following up with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and is back to casting Donald Trump and, of course, the allies of Donald Trump as threats to the future of this country. So the Democrats are going back to their same old playbook. Now, Newsom, again, as most of you know, he's in this big redistricting fight in California. He's putting this on the ballot coming up very, very soon because he wants to do this redistricting, because he says we'll lose this republic, we'll lose our democracy, all the simple terms that they throw out there on the left. It's the same playbook. They never put it down. They always use it. We'll lose this. First of all, we don't live in a democracy, Gavin. We live in a republic. So we don't want a mob rule. That's exactly what we don't want. The founders hated the idea of having mob rule. Now, it's not even an overstatement, is what he said during this live stream. By the way, what's up with these podcasts that he's doing? Why can't he simply lead the state of California? And again, I gave you 30 of very many things in which he's destroying the state of California that he can work on. He said, this is code red. We need to wake up to what's going on. First of all, what's happening in California? By the way, they've gerrymandered California to death, by the way. Absolutely gerrymandered it to death. And now he wants the state of 39 million people to only have 4 Republican seats. I know most of you think of California as, again, being this bastion of liberalism and leftism and total chaos and a deep blue state, of course. But if you actually lived in California, if you saw the way people act, there are obviously many people that are on the left that live in California. I'm not doubting that at all. But the state as a whole does not agree with these left-wing values that, again, he and his party in Sacramento continue to push out. If you go to inland California, it's not like that at all. Charlie Kirk just had a memorial on the Huntington Beach Pier with probably, I'd have to say, based on the pictures I've looked at and just knowing how the Huntington Beach Pier is set up, I'd say there was at least, at the bare minimum, well over 1,000 people there in Huntington Beach. And again, I don't even know the entire scope of it. I just saw one picture looking at the pier. The pier is full of people in the area surrounding it. And again, I've seen other things for Donald Trump when Donald Trump was in Orange County. Just a huge rows of people with Trump flags, Trump hats, American flags. They're not even attending the event that he's in. They're just outside. Anytime, I think it's AM 870 and Salem News did these town halls just packed with people at these events. So don't just cast California aside and think that everybody's on board with the lunatic and crazies of Gavin Newsom's party that are doing all these things, or that everybody in the state agrees with this nonsense. They don't. But if we had free and fair elections, you wouldn't see any of this craziness going on. Just thought I'd share that with you. By the way, before we move on from California and Gavin Newsom, Californians, pay attention to this, because I'm probably one of the few shows that tell you all this. California is exploring the implementation of a per-mile road charge to replace the wonderful gas tax, right? As a revenue from the gas tax continues to decline, I guess Gavin Newsom's regretting selling the whole EV initiative. This road charge would be a mileage-based user fee for drivers using the roads. Now, additionally, existing legislation requires the establishment of a road usage charge technical advisory. Of course, there's always a committee involved in all this nonsense. Right, they got to pay these people to get on the board, pass these measures they want, so they can, again, in return, take more of your hard-earned money. Why not? Why wouldn't they? Now, this gas tax is supposed to be used to fix the roads, which very few roads in California, I'd have to say, since its passing in 2018, have been even fixed. But this advisory board is going to be guiding the development of this pilot program, assessing this potential revenue collection method. So what I'm thinking, what they're going to do, if I had to come up with something, what I'm thinking they're going to do is every time you register your vehicle every year. You're going to have to put down how many, what the mileage of the vehicle is, right? They're going to look at things probably like how many miles per gallon your vehicle gets. Yeah? They're going to look at that. And they're also going to look at how many miles you've traveled. And they're going to come up with some type of formula used to issue a surcharge for that per mile that you use. And of course, how much emissions are you putting out? And that is going to be the way they try to control how you move and move freely on your way in California. Oh, well, you drive 4,000 miles a year? Okay. You should get closer to work, pal. You owe us, whatever they try to put it on, it's surcharge. Let's say it's, 50 cents. You owe us $2,000 up front. God knows if you're somebody that, travels for work, the amount of money you'll be paying the state of California. For the roads, of course, right? They're going to try to fix the roads still. It only gets worse, folks. It only continues to get worse and worse in the state of California. No loss of lunacy in that state at all. This is an interesting article I wanted to share with you. It's an opinion, but it's by a gentleman that I greatly admire. This is in the Washington Times. It's by the great Judge Andrew Napolitano. And it really made me think. So I want you to hear it too. That way you can come up to your own decision on this. But he says that Supreme Court betrays Fourth Amendment with show your papers ruling. Now, right then and there, he captivated me right off the bat because I said, what are they talking about here? And it says very plainly, it says that shadow docket decision allows the federal agents, he's referring to ICE here, to demand the proof of citizenship without warrants or any type of probable cause. Now, he goes off by giving you some background on what the Fourth Amendment is, in case you're not familiar with it. It states that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures, not having a seizure, but the seizure of your documentation or you, shall not be violated. And no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, we can look at this for many different situations. And he's referring, of course, to what's been happening with these ICE detainees that they go out, and what's happening now. In some cases, they're simply going to these hotbeds where they believe illegal aliens are, and they're simply saying, can you show us your papers to prove you're an American citizen? Now, I mean, if you came to me right now and said, let's say I'm out walking, right? And a vehicle pulls me over. And they say they're with ICE. And they say, show us you're an American citizen. And I mean, what can I show them? I'm walking down the street. Oftentimes, when I was in California, I always had my license with me. But they can basically say, okay, you don't have your license. We don't have any type of identification. You're coming with us. Until further proof that you are an American citizen. And then I'd have to go through my, my court hearing, I suppose, or what have you. But we're running into a big situation with all this. Last week, in an unsigned order issued without an explanation, in direct defiance of the plain language of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, our Supreme Court of the United States permitted a federal police, that would be ICE, to stop people in public, demand to see their proof of lawful presence here, and in absence of that proof is to arrest them. Now, the Trump administration has been forced with this task, of course, of removing illegal aliens from the United States. Tom Homan has come on Fox News or what have you and stated basically the following, that if you're here illegally in this country, you're going to be sent back. So now, while many of us consider and champion in that illegal aliens don't have a right to be in this nation, Some people would argue, perhaps, some scholars may even argue, that illegal aliens are not benefited those rights in the United States. That could be something they look at, that they simply don't have those rights, that those rights are only granted to American citizens. So it's a very odd situation to be put in, coming from a conservative point of view, because, again, do illegal aliens have a right to be in the United States? And the answer to that is no. They are not of our jurisdiction. They are of a different nation's jurisdiction. That's just the plain truth of it. We've talked about birthright citizenship and the challenge the Trump administration wants to have on that. But does the American government have a right to simply send ICE around to locations where they can view people and say, let's go see if this guy's an American citizen? And if he doesn't have any type of documentation on him that shows that he's a legal citizen, which I would imagine is, a birth certificate or a green card or something of that to show that they're of legal presence in the United States. By the way, we've got 55,000 visas that have expired of people living here. We've got 40 to 50 million illegal aliens living here. So, again, we don't know the names of all these people. If we had the names, we would know who they are. So how do you go about executing this detaining of illegal aliens in the United States? That would be my question, obviously. How do we look at this from a practical manner? Someone just walking down the street and they can just simply decide? Are they doing this to everybody? Are they doing it to people that, are speaking a different language only that they view, or look a certain way, or work a certain job? We have to ask ourselves these questions. Now, the judge went on to say in his article, he said in 1765, I know I'm taking you back a bit, British agents began to execute these writs of assistance in America. And these writs were search warrants that did not describe the place to be searched or the person or things to be seized, but rather was this authorized the bearer to search wherever they wished, to seize whatever they want. Now, a court in London issued these general warrants upon a showing of only of governmental need. Such a showing was, of course, meaningless because whatever the government wanted, it could tell the court it needed. So in this case, the Trump administration would have to know exactly that person's name, where they are staying, and why, again, they are being detained. They've got to go to a court and prove that. How are you going to do that with illegal aliens of whom you don't know who they are? Unless, of course, they are arrested for some type of crime. So the court is going to have to come to this. And versus just telling you to, just show me your papers. If you show someone your papers, you're fine. I'm sorry, are we living in East Germany all of a sudden? But I got to worry about going down the street and getting stopped by masked agents? And again, I understand why they're wearing the mask. They don't want to be doxxed. They don't want to be threatened. They don't want their family threatened. I understand that. But think about the reality of that situation. You're in an area where it's a heavily illegal population. I told you Los Angeles alone has 1.2 million, and that's being generous, illegal aliens residing just in the LA city limits alone. So are we to say that it's just simply fine that if they go and stop somebody in Los Angeles because they perceive that person might be an illegal alien? So I don't know how this all is going to work out or what the proper means would be to this. But Justice Kavanaugh simply saying, well, if you have your documents, it's simply fine. Or if you're asked to show your documents, I don't have to show anybody anything, I don't think. If I'm walking down the street on my own, in upstate New York or California or wherever the hell I am in the United States, I don't think I have to be stopped without any type of probable cause. A cop can't just simply pull you over just to pull you over. There has to be some sort of, again, violation made, or traffic violation, or a probable cause to pull my vehicle over. That has to exist. So it's going to be, again, difficult for the Trump administration, I think, to do this. Again, I don't know what the answer to this is. You had the Biden administration let about 20 million illegal aliens in this nation. Do we simply just say, you know what? The government let these people in. They're here. We're going to let them stay here, and that's it. How can a nation survive on that? Never forget, I've told you this time and time again. The Constitution was made for a moral and just people. If you have people, again, violating these laws to get into the United States, breaking our immigration laws to come into the United States, are we simply to say, well, they got in, I guess they're going to stay here now because we don't want to violate their rights? Again, I don't have the right answer to this. I understand completely what the judge is saying. Do people have to be fearing for their, life? I mean, again, anyone walking the street. If I walk out on the street right now, if I'm in front of my house or something, and ICE agents pulled up and said, hey, show us your papers. I mean, I don't have papers on me. Sitting in a safe somewhere. I don't know where the hell they are. So it's a very slippery slope when we talk about this. The judge goes on to say, after that the revolution was won, it'll be the American Revolution, and the Constitution was ratified, which we discussed yesterday on the program, in 1788, the 13 states ratified the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, which was called the Bill of Rights. The theory of the Bill of Rights is that not that the new government would grant these rights, but rather it was prohibited absolutely by legislation or executive decree from interfering with these rights. Now, from where did the framers believe that human rights came? Now, according to the Declaration and codified in the Ninth Amendment from our humanity as a gift from the Creator, right? The Fourth Amendment is the most radical of the first 10 because it recognizes several things. It recognizes personal privacy, the right to be left alone. Think about what happened during COVID. You had businesses telling you they had to take a shot of which you may not have wanted, or maybe you wanted more information on it before you took it. And then they told you to show us your COVID passport, right? Your health passport to get into a business, eat in a restaurant, go into a store, show your employer. It's a total violation of your privacy and, of course, HIPAA laws, too. But that didn't stop the Biden regime from telling businesses they could do that. But it is a natural right. And the government may only interfere with this right only upon obtaining a warrant from a judge based on probable cause of a crime about the person or place named in this warrant. A warrant that specifically describes the place to be searched or a person or things to be seized. So I don't know. Will the Supreme Court simply say that illegal aliens don't have these rights? Does every single human being on earth have these rights? If they just come into our jurisdiction of the United States inside our sovereign borders? So I don't know the answer to this. We have upwards of 40 to 50 million illegals, 55 million visa holders, of which have expired in the United States. So that's 105 million, roughly, people that have no right to be in this nation. What's the answer to this? How do we get these people? Do we know these? We don't know all these people. That task in and of itself would be just insanely difficult to achieve. So this shadow docket, a creation of the court under Chief Justice John Roberts, the judge goes on to say, is deeply frustrating and profoundly disturbing to the judiciary epidemiology, legal and law enforcement communities as it produces orders without reasons. So from a constitutional standpoint, again, we have to figure out, does the Constitution apply to simply everybody that comes in here, even if they're here of illegal status, of which they have no right to be here? Now, many people on the right are going to be telling you they have no right to be here, so that doesn't apply to them. Those rights don't apply. When I read this, it makes me wonder, though, does it apply? Did the Founding Fathers believe that illegal? We know what they thought about immigration. But what would they say about a government that let in, intentionally, millions of illegal aliens into this country to work for cheap labor, largely, to come in? Or would they simply say that if you're here, you are granted every one of these rights under the Constitution? And if that's what it does mean, I mean, realistically, what the hell's the point of citizenship? That's what I have to say about that. Might as well grant everybody citizenship upon just walking across the border then. And again, that's what this amnesty for all is. So again, I don't have the right answer to this. I don't like the idea of ICE just going around and stopping people. But there's got to be a way to, again, go in and figure out who's who. Right? We got to figure this out in a much more organized framework to go in, to detain people that simply aren't there, with the right of a judge, to go in and stop this from continuing on. We can't have a nation like this, a two-tiered America, where we have citizens and non-citizens gaining all the rights and more of citizens. I've told you this time and time again. You have Gavin Newsom giving $250 million of taxpayer money for illegal aliens to access health care in the state of California. Do you think the Founding Fathers would want that? Well, they'd be disgusted by our tax system, I can tell you that much. But, I mean, what is the right way to go about this? What is the right way to do this? Show your papers? Something tells me that part's not right. So I don't know. I read this, it really made me think. That's why I wanted to share it with you. What is the right answer here? What is the right answer here? I really don't know. Do we want to see a police state like this in our streets? Is this how we're supposed to live as free Americans? But then you have to ask yourself the question, too. We are living in a nation where we have an illegal alien population of not just a few people, of many millions of people that are simply existing under all legal parameters. And again, if you're here illegally, that means you're working illegally. We have people employed illegally, and you have other people breaking laws. What is the way to solve this? How do we get through this in a legal, justified, respectable manner? How do we do that? Because there's got to be a way to do it. I simply just don't think that show your papers is the right approach to all this. And, we're seeing, these warrants. We are seeing warrants, though. Don't think it's not just any warrants. We are seeing warrants. Laura Ingraham had a plethora of people, of which were stopped and detained by ICE and caught by ICE. Many of them were, criminals prior to this. So they know certain people, but they don't simply know everybody. So, again, we'll see how this turns out in the court ruling. I don't know how this is going to end. All right. Hope I made you think a little bit today, though. Moving on, let's talk about this and just the news, kind of relating to what we were talking about earlier. The Trump administration, of course, has... I didn't like this case when it took place at all. And many of you will probably remember this. This had to do with Mahmoud Khalil. And he was the organizer of several protests on the campus of Columbia University. He was arrested And he was sent to Louisiana, which again made absolutely no sense to me, because you're supposed to be detained and tried in the county of which you commit whatever crime, allegedly. It is. That's what you're supposed to have done. But now an immigration judge in Louisiana has now ordered that, and he is a legal immigrant. He's not illegal. He's here legally. And he's now a former Columbia University student. Mahmoud Khalil be deported to Algeria or Syria, according to court documents filed on Wednesday. So now we've got to ask ourselves, is the First Amendment really under attack here? Because what laws did Khalil break? We know Marco Rubio has come forward and stated that anyone here on a visa, on a student visa or what have you, that is out protesting in the name of Palestine or whoever the government decides, I guess, they don't agree with, will have their visas revoked and they will be removed from the country. They'll be deported. Now, again, I don't know how they got him to Louisiana. He's in New York. Now, he may live in New Jersey. I forget exactly where he lived, but this took place on the Columbia campus in New York City. Now, this order was made on Friday by Judge Jamie Comins in denying Khalil's motion for a waiver preventing his removal in the United States. Comins said that she based this decision because Khalil omitted information from his green card application, is what's being said. Khalil was arrested and detained in March in New York by federal immigration agents following his participation in pro-Palestinian protests in 2024 on the campus of the Ivy League University. The president wrote in a post on social media, on Truth Social, at the time of his arrest, stating that this administration will not tolerate what he said were to be, and again, this is why I say we're getting in this slippery slope when you have the government deciding what is just speech and what is not just speech. But what he said that were pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity on a college campus across the country. He also said that Khalil is also pro-Hamas, and he said that his administration would find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our country. So even though Khalil was released in June, it appears that he's on his way to, I guess, being deported to Algeria or Syria. So I look at this and I say, here's somebody who's here legally, who attended the university. I believe he was in a master's program, if I'm not mistaken. And he sets up a protest, and the federal government decides what is going to happen on a private university's campus. Arrest him for that. Again, I don't even know what he was charged with, other than funding a protest. Well, so we need to ask ourselves, is that right that the government can come in and decide exactly what you have said on a campus in terms of a protest and decide that you can be removed from the country based on that? Now, again, this judge went on to say that the court in the ruling found that Khalil, in his applications for lawful permanent residence and his status, willfully misrepresented material facts for the sole purpose of circumventing the immigration process and reducing the likelihood his application could be denied. This court cannot and will not condone such an action being granted a discretionary action for waiver. We live in such interesting times, don't we? Don't think that freedom of speech isn't under attack. And again, I don't have to agree with anything Khalil protests for or says. Anyone can get up and say what he's saying is anti-Semitic if he questions the narrative of something. Now, if he's out there expressing people to go out and commit violent acts against Jews or any group of people that support Israel, that's a much different situation in and of itself. But clearly that didn't happen here because they would have charged him for that. They're not charging him. They're charging him for apparently lying on his visa application for his green card. This is what they're alleging. And they're not being very specific in saying exactly what it was, other than that he was trying to mislead authorities. Now, Khalil came out and said, "It is no surprise that the Trump administration continues to retaliate against me for my exercise of free speech. Their latest attempt through a kangaroo immigration court, exposing their true colors once again." So again, if you cannot protest freely, do you really have a First Amendment? Again, I don't have to like anything Khalil's saying. I don't have to agree with anything Khalil's saying. It's my right to do so. But it's also right as his First Amendment, as a legal recipient of a green card, then they get all the rights that we have. And again, as I shared with you in Judge Napolitano's article, we have to figure out where exactly the founders even believed illegal aliens would have rights. They granted a Fourth Amendment right. But if Khalil's here legally, and he says something that the federal government disagrees with, they're going to kick him out of the country? Again, if he's committed a crime and violated that green card, that's something totally different. What is he being charged with? Because saying you will not tolerate pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, or anti-American activities, you have to explain what law he broke. I mean, he's out there saying, hey, let's go smash up Columbia University right now. And he's involved in that action. That's something totally different. We didn't see that. At least I don't believe we saw that. Because again, if he did, we would see that he is being charged with that. And I haven't seen any grounds for that. And again, not being charged in that jurisdiction, to give him a judge of which is going to be ruling on behalf of the Trump administration, I don't like either. Because he should have been charged in Manhattan, not Louisiana. Oh, folks. I don't know. I really don't know sometimes what's happening in this country. Again, I try to give it to you as straightforward as I can. I don't like giving you these examples of how the federal government right now is trampling on your First Amendment. We just saw the other day Pam Bondi getting up there and saying that they're going to start to crack down on hate speech, make hate speech laws. What the hell's hate speech? And who determines what it is? This is the slippery slope that we find ourselves in. All right, one last article. We got a few minutes remaining in the program today. This is the Gateway Pundit. I was going to go over the exchange between Adam Shifless and Kash Patel earlier this week, but I don't think I'll have nearly enough time I want to get to go over that. We'll probably save that for tomorrow. This article says America's beef shortage. How the Mexico cattle crisis threatens your dinner table. I think food is a big staple. I think you all could agree on that, right? It's important that we have access to good food and, of course, a good amount of it. So the problem at hand right now is that beef is under pressure, folks. Beef is under fire, and not the fire from a grill, like I would have in just a little bit. But the U.S. normally imports about 1 million head of cattle from Mexico each year. That's how the article goes on. And these aren't finished animals. They aren't ready for slaughter. They're feeder cattle, which tend to be a little bit lighter. They put them on these feedlots, and of course the young stock gets fattened up, and eventually when they reach the certain weight, they'll be shipped to a meat processor, they'll be slaughtered, they'll be processed further on, and then they get diced up into the great steaks and burgers and types of beef that we like to have and see in the grocery store. In 2025, the supply for that, though, coming in from Mexico is beginning to trickle. And the reason for that is the parasite now known as the New World screwworm. And it's really screwing up our beef supply. And its rapid spread throughout southern Mexico, where a lot of this livestock comes from, has now forced the U.S. to impose these bans and heavy restrictions on live cattle imports. So, as a result, many parts of entry in Texas and Arizona, New Mexico, that once handled thousands of head of cattle is now sitting idle. We're not seeing those shipments come in. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, if we're going to dice that up throughout every day of the year, we're looking at importing, if we're trying to get 1 million, you're looking at getting roughly almost 3,000 head of cattle in the U.S. every day. That's what you're looking at. We're not seeing that. So now the U.S. Department of Agriculture projects that beef prices are now going to be climbing by 10% this year. The staple, of course, ground beef, we see our steaks, all those will continue to go up. Again, this is as a result of simple supply and demand. With fewer cattle entering the United States market, supply is now tightening up, and now families are going to be paying for that price. You have the same demand, lower supply, the price goes up. You know how that works. Economics 101. We haven't seen a cattle crisis like this in about 70 years. Food shortage security emergency like this for domestic cattle is shrinking down. I mean, again, this is what my article the other day was all about. When you make it harder for a small family farm or operation to exist, and you only have big farms, right? I mean, they're looking to operate as much as they can. Even if you have several thousand of head of livestock on it, you're still going to see that struggle. First, you had much more smaller operations in business. So my answer to you on all that is try to buy local if you can. If you are buying from, farms that were abroad in Mexico or where have you, you're probably going to see those prices in your grocery store start to go up pretty soon. Folks, if you enjoy the show today, I hope you'll share it with some friends. As always, I do appreciate you when you do that. Make sure you're keeping your house in order. Make sure you're keeping some steaks in your fridge too, by the way, because those prices are going to start going up probably very, very soon. Even the organic and grass-fed industry will probably be hit at some point. So make sure you're doing that, folks. Store up your food, your water, clothing, ammo, money, anything you need to be self-sufficient. Do that. And do it quick because, again, you never know when you're going to run into some type of trouble. Folks, I'll see you tomorrow on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless each and every one of you. Have a great day.